To record, so we have it. With that, I'll give it to Miriam to kick us off.
Are we recording already?
Yes, we are. We're ready to go.
Great. Thank you so much, and apologize for the wait. We had some technical issues. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your lunch time with us today at QualLab's second lunch talk this semester. My name is Mian Mian, and I am a graduate research associate at QualLab. We are a research center focusing on advancing qualitative inquiry towards innovation, equity, diversity, and justice at The Ohio State University here in Columbus. Today, we are very excited to bring you a dynamic panel presentation and discussion on a critical topic in our fast-changing world. Joining us are esteemed experts in higher education, learning technology, and of course, qualitative research. Together, we're going to explore the intersection of AI and teaching qualitative research in higher education. Sorry, Okay, so before we start, we also want to share where we're coming from because this is very important to us. We acknowledge that the land of The Ohio State University is located on the traditional homeland of the Shawnee, Potawatomi, Delaware, Miami, Correia, Seneca, Wyandot, Ojibwe, and other indigenous nations who have strong ties to this land. So here's our agenda today. We'll first have some words of welcome and an introduction to the QualLab from our director, Dr. Penny Pasque. After a few words of housekeeping rules, our panelists will each introduce themselves and start the conversation by sharing a few key issues or concerns or tips about using AI as an instructor specifically of qualitative research. For the second half of the hour, we will open up the floor to the audience for any comments and questions. We really want this to be a virtual space, a fire chat for us to share our experience, raise issues, and potentially discuss possible solutions. And I will close today's lunch talk by telling you how you can get more involved with the QualLab. So Dr. Pasque, please take it away by welcoming all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Min. I really appreciate working with you and everyone at the QualLab team. Thank you so much. So we at the QualLab are a group of people who work on qualitative research. We study it, we consult, we work on grants, all the things in order to make sure that we're strengthening the rigor of qualitative research, whatever your paradigmatic approach, whatever your methods, whether you're arts-based, post-positivist, postmodern, critical, whatever your approach, we want to make sure that your work is solid and have a lot on the website in terms of that work. With the next slide, a little bit about consultations if you're interested in, because we're all on soft money now, if you're interested in working with us on consultations, please reach out. We can work with you on that. And of course, grants and all that good stuff. So you can see it online. But with the next slide, I think we'll get going in terms of really kicking off this conversation. Do you want to help us with the housekeeping, Miriam?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Pasque. So just a few very simple housekeeping items. So please turn off your microphone during the first part of the session, but please feel free to share any questions or comments using the microphone or the chat space during the second half when we move to the fireside chat. Again, we really want to hear from you and have a conversation with you. I also want to draw your attention that the session is being recorded and you'll be able to access the recording on our YouTube channel after the session. Closed captioning is provided during the session, and you can enable the function at the bottom right corner of your video box. Now let's put our hands together to welcome our distinguished panelists today. So I will ask each of you to please introduce yourself, including your roles and institutions, and get us started by sharing a few key issues, concerns, and tips about using AI as an instructor, specifically of qualitative research. So let's go alphabetically from right to left, with our director, Dr. Pasque, going last. So Dr. Correia, I know you have a few slides to share, so we will continue sharing the screen, and please let us know when I should change the slide. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Pasque, to invite me to be part of this exciting conversation. I'm going to try to be brief so we have time for a discussion at the end. And introductions. My name is Ana-Paula Correia. I'm a professor of learning technology in the Department of Educational Studies, and also the director of the Center on Education and Training for Employment, known as CET. My interest about generative AI resides on the use of it, the use of these AI tools in education, training, and of course, research. My goal is to help people use AI tools in a safe and responsible way, but also be able to interact with these tools so they can assist us with the demanding tasks required from an education researcher in general and a qualitative education researcher in particular. If you could show the next slide, please. I have listed here some popular AI tools at the moment because this landscape changes weekly as we speak that can support our research work. All of them have a free version that you can experiment with, and I encourage everyone to give it a try because everyone needs to have their own first-hand opinion about all of these tools and how they can assist or not the work, your work as a researcher or as an instructor on qualitative research. So we have the well-known ChatGPT that was released in November 2022 by OpenAI. We have the Copilot by Microsoft. This is one of the tools recommended by Ohio State. So everyone has affiliation to Ohio State is recommended to use Copilot. It's very agile and it can do a lot for you, including generating images. You have Gemini by Google that you probably already have heard about it. And I wanted to just touch a touch point on the Notebook LM by Google as well. This is one of the tools that I found particularly useful when using AI tools for research, because you can upload PDFs/articles, websites, YouTube videos, audio files, Google files, and it will not only summarize them for you, but also make connections between topics according to your prompt. And we're going to talk a little bit about prompt later, but it's just the prompt is the question you ask the system, so the system can create an output, which will be the response from the system. And also Claude by Anthropic. This is quite promising at reasoning and logical thinking. Again, please experiment and have your own opinion about on how these tools can help you with your work as a researcher and as an instructor. And having said that, I'm not proposing here that we simply use output generated by these tools in our research or in our work as researchers. My point here is that we can use them to create initial outlines, refine human-generated drafts, proofread, and grammar checks. Those are particularly useful for me because English is not my second language, and translate documents into other languages. This is something that I also use extensively. They will not replace the human activity, in my opinion. Instead, they will assist us to become more efficient, more productive, kind of augment our work as a researcher. This is important for me to share with you at this point, because I don't want people to think that the output should be taken as it is. The output should never be taken as it is. We need to use our critical eye, as well as all of our expertise, creativity, and intelligence as humans to critique, redo, refine, and change the output. Next slide, please. Now I wanted to just talk a little bit about AI-powered qualitative analysis tools. So you all know better than me the classics, and they might integrate AI, probably already do or not. I've not mentioned the classics here, but they are Atlas TI and Max QTA. But I'm going to mention something here for you to explore. In terms of AI tools to support qualitative data analysis, those are newer tools than the ones I just mentioned before. So many of them, and I just picked two of them. There's more that you can explore, and I can drop them on the chat if you want to know. These are newer tools. That means many of them are still under development and not fully tested. That's why us going in and experiment with them is critical at this point, to have our own opinion if this is useful for us or not. So I just have two suggestions for you to explore just for fun, and also to help you with your work if it's possible. One is the Dovetail. This is becoming one of the prominent tools. It analyzes data from various sources and uncovers themes in text, audio, video, and documents. And then we have the Hey Marvin. This seems to be very popular too among the new generation of qualitative researchers. I can also drop the links of these tools on the chat. And it collects research data, allows for collaboration with peers, and finds, according to the tool, finds insights quickly. But for me, the big question is, next slide, please. What are the best way and the most satisfying way, meaning we're getting what we want and what we need or what we desire, to interact with these AI tools or AI system? This is where the power, in my opinion, this is where the power of human creativity and intelligence comes in, when we create the question that allows the interaction with the system in order to generate an output that is satisfying to us. It's what we wanted. So I'm not going to talk more about prompting here. I encourage you to read my recent blog about this topic. It discusses best practice for well-designed prompts. Also, I can promote my blog here, and there's also a few ways for you to stay in touch with me. And this was my 5 minutes introduction. I hope I didn't go over. Thank you again.
And Mimmin, who would be next? Dr. Iverson, I think? Oh, great. Dr. Iverson.
Thank you. And hopefully everything will come clear. I just got one of those little, like, your internet is being goofy messages. So, but thank you for the opportunity to be here. I love the idea of a fireside chat, and you can see that most of us are sitting in front of a blazing fire virtually. So I'm Susan Iverson, and I direct the doctoral program in educational leadership at Manhattanville University, which is located in New York. And I use the pronouns she, her. Why I'm glad that this is a fireside chat is because since ChatGPT sort of came on, I don't really have expertise. It's rather a continuing conversation that I'm looking to engage with anyone and everyone. And Penny knows, because I started one day emailing her and going, hey, what's happening at the OSU QualLab. Our doctoral faculty have spent over a year in conversations about some of the implications of this for educational leadership, doctoral research, and for me, who teaches, advanced qualitative research courses to also think about what does this mean for researchers generally, but as one who prepares doctoral students who are typically novices, what are the implications of this for their research as they're stepping into it? Some of the ways that I'll quickly highlight that I see them using it. One, I want to say none of this worries me in regards to plagiarism or any of those concerns. Rather, it's grappling with how is this a tool. And when students are sharing, they are sharing in a way that's saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. Peer debriefer is one of the largest ways that they are turning to this tool, and that's why I'm intrigued by Claude, which apparently has a little bit more human-esque interaction to it. And that peer debriefing could start when they're drafting an interview protocol to try to identify, are there leading questions here? It could be how they're starting to conceptually map things. Certainly in the data analysis realm, it's a peer debriefer in the ways of sort of checking some of your assumptions. The risks, which are more where I lean into, is when we are novice researchers, we don't know more than the machine. And so the risks are that if we're not really sure what to do with our data, we might rush too quickly to turn to some of these tools. And the marketplace is just exploding with putting, and we really haven't taken a moment to distinguish AI from generative AI. I'll give one quick example because then I know we're going to move to chat. So what has been referred to, Otter has AI tacked onto the end of its name and web URL. But it has, and it's a phenomenal transcription tool. And I would highly recommend it for that purpose. But as the marketplace has moved into generative AI, that means that this artificial intelligence tool is doing some thinking. And so transcripts now produced by Otter AI actually have a summary at the end where it is offering to the user, here's what I see as some themes. And so students that maybe didn't even realize that added feature was there are now sharing their transcript with me as their advisor saying, should I start here? Right? And so that's some of the risks and cautions is these tools. And for the purest of qualitative researchers, these AI tools, while they'll get trained maybe to be better, are still very frequency driven and rather reductionist, which I think and certainly doesn't know our research questions or our conceptual framework or our theoretical lens, which means that it's being very sort of top level, which isn't, as qualitative researchers, really the story that we want to have told. So I'll pause there with some of those observations about uses and risks. Thanks.
All right, I think I am next. Thank you for the heads up. My name is Detra Price, and I am colleagues with some of the wonderful folks on this call and meeting Dr. Iverson for the first time. We didn't see each other in New York City. I don't know how we didn't pass each other at some point in time. But thank you again. I echo what my colleagues have already said about the invitation to join this conversation today. So I think I am the executive director here at the College of Education and Human Ecology for our Center for Digital Learning and Innovation. And I'm also a professor in the Department of Teaching and Learning. My concerns around AI are what brings me to this conversation. Genuinely, I think for many of us probably started summer of 2022, and there's like some blog post rumblings and some things on social media, and then definitely by fall of 2022 full blown in the conversation is around equity and democratizing AI. And so I'm really curious about what experiences we are giving our students that are maybe working with us in our labs or our centers, but also what we're doing in our research that helps us understand the types of experiences students need to have a better or more informed understanding of these tools? And what does that look like? And how do we capture and document that and grapple with the tensions that, that are presented as we try to do that work? And I think my biggest concern then, if that's sort of what brings me into the conversation, is just, well, what is happening? How are we preparing our students, whether that's at the university level or in the K-12 level, to engage with AI as a tool for learning or a tool for documenting learning?
Mhm.
And those questions to me open up a whole other world, right? What type of competencies should we all be working on or working towards for ourselves, with our students in our labs or centers, and with the folks that we're doing research with? Because part of that equity piece is making sure they understand how their data is thus being used by these tools. The other piece is understanding what AI literacies we may ethically or even on our own terms feel are important to make sure our participants understand and have, and that we have, and that our students have. So that's layered around those type of literacy practices. What are our expectations? And I think this is a bigger conversation, right, with journals. I am not a journal editor, so I don't even want to pretend to know what you all, those of you who might be on the call right now, might be dealing with around this. But are there recommendations? I didn't even look, the last piece I just did in Teachers College Record, I didn't even look to see if they had a statement around AI, but I should know that. But I'm very curious what journals are doing, what the expectations are, how people should be disclosing their use of AI in their research. And then what's the last thing I would say? What questions should we be asking then around ethics, data, and I think I say this all the time, most importantly, policy. What should we be demanding? Like, what are the policy things that we should be saying at our university and institutions that we expect our tools to do? And I do think when I talk to colleagues, and many of you probably are in the same space at other institutions, I do feel like our university with Copilot and the guardrails that we have around it, how we're not contributing to LLM and LLM, how everything is erased, that gives me more satisfaction that I'm hearing some of my other colleagues have who don't have those same guardrails at this time. And so those are just a few observations and thoughts and concerns, and hopefully we can get into some of the tensions. Actually, I'll add one more, and Casey might talk about this as well. We just had a really interesting conversation in our AI working group, and there is a tension around technology, innovation, and IT. And that might happen in K-12 and it might happen in higher education. But how do we innovate and explore and try new things with new tools when there are constraints and policies and practices in place around approval, around accessibility, things that should be there? But that timeline of, hey, I want to use this new tool, but it has to go through your university approval process is constraining. But it should be a process, because we want to make sure that what we're doing is accessible and ethical and doesn't pose security risk. So I'd add that as another thing that we need to grapple with. How do we work together to not thwart innovation, but also not sacrifice other things that we believe in?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Detra. And I also want to echo thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to fireside chat with all of you. So I will also try to be brief so that we can get into the fireside piece. My name is Casey Rinehard. Pronouns are she, her. I am the Director for Distance Education and Learning Design within the center that Detra mentioned as the Executive Director, our Center for Digital Innovation. I am also the co-lead for EHE's AI and Education work group that we have within our center and we're doing across our college. And then I also happen to teach 2 asynchronous courses that are around education and technology. I will say I am not a qualitative researcher, and not a researcher at all. So of everyone you've seen so far, I am coming as the layman when it comes to research for sure. So my focus is more on education, use of AI in education, and use really in everyday work and life as well. I was thinking as we were getting into this about some key issues and concerns, and a lot of them, this is kind of what happens when you go toward the end. A lot of them have been addressed. We've discussed them. So I'll just highlight briefly. Privacy is one that, to keep in mind when we're using AI. So making sure that either you're using an approved tool in a way that protects privacy, or you're redacting information. So that just keeping in mind that one thing of once it's out there, it can't be removed. You can't pull it back. It lives in the internet now. And then accuracy, as Ana-Paula was saying, there is not a single AI output that should actually be used as is. Everything needs to be reviewed, needs to be vetted for accuracy before utilizing it. And equity, plagiarism checkers or AI checkers, they are known to be biased. These tools are trained on and by humans with set biases. So just keep those things in mind, that these are not tools that really prove that kind of use or disuse of. And I'm going to say the one thing I think is kind of a big issue or concern is just not using it. So Detra was hitting on this as well of, how are we serving our learners, and how are we serving the future educators, future researchers, by just restricting the use of AI in the classroom. So instead, I think I think the biggest key is just getting out there and starting to use it, learning about prompt engineering, learning how to prompt engineer, what specifically you can include in your questions to AI that will get you the results that you want, including the context, the perspective, the audience, those different things that you can include in a simple prompt that will provide you with those results that are closer to what you're looking for. And also learning how to engage with AI so that you might get a prompt and then build off of that prompt. So, okay, you've provided me with a great idea about how I could do this specific assignment in my course. Now help me to build a rubric for how I might grade that assignment. You can basically build and have a conversation with AI as you continue to learn how to use it. And then it gives you the opportunity to also recognize what those AI outputs look like. So when we are thinking about that area of misconduct and misuse, being in that world and learning that you're using it, you're also giving yourself an opportunity to see what it would look like if for some reason you were suspecting misuse. It just provides you with kind of that lens of what those AI outputs really look like. I would love to engage further on the conversation if we get into that in the fireside chat around this tension between innovation and vetted or approved tools, and where those gaps exist and what we need versus what is approved to use, and how that might have some impacts on innovation. I will throw out there just a couple of ideas that came to mind that I will share that I really enjoy using AI specifically as an educator. The first and foremost is that it's kind of that favorite colleague of mine or partner that I work with. In the sense, back in the day when we also, I don't know if you all have this, but when we were in person all the time, you would go to that person next door, or the person you always grab lunch with, and you'd be like, hey, can you read this email before I send it? Or I'm trying to think of this thing, can you help me? That's AI now. Like, it is my best friend throughout the day of, can you check this email for tone, for clarity? Just kind of using it as that partner throughout the day. And also just kind of kicking off planning, brainstorming, turning ideas into actual coherent things that you can use in the work that you're doing. That communication I mentioned, for clarity, you can think about how to clarify your assignment instructions, or maybe in the qualitative researcher world, maybe evaluating something for the sentiment. What is this response trying to say, or what is the sentiment around that? Another way that I use it a lot before I wrap up here is in kind of summarizing. So like thematic analysis or doing summaries for me. I will be in a meeting and I will take a stream of consciousness kind of notes. But then what do I do with those? How do I get those to my team to help them know what happened in that meeting or what they need to do next? I will use AI. I will dump that and ask it to summarize the key ideas or key takeaways, or based on this specific idea or concept, what are the elements that we pull from this meeting based on these notes? So it can really help to highlight patterns or help categorize and group things based on, you know, a certain context if you provide it. So just some ideas from me, and I'm excited to hear from everyone else and continue the fireside chat.
Thank you so much, Casey. I've heard you talk and been in some of the presentations, and you talk about it as like the jolt of coffee that gets you kind of thinking, similar to what you were saying today about this is a thought partner, a colleague, and just always appreciate hearing all of you talk about this. So as a qualitative researcher, I want to say it's using AI is certainly different than not using it, but in both cases, all cases, researcher is the instrument. It's your decisions, it's your thinking, it's your research design, and making sure that you're working with communities, coming up with the right questions, thinking it through, and making the right decisions in terms of which software for qualitative, which AI software, what are the conversations you're having, how are you making sure that you are protecting in terms of confidentiality versus anonymity, right? Those are different things with IRB. Also, I wanted to recommend this book by Johns Hopkins Press. It was just published. This is what I am reading and appreciate right now, Teaching with AI. It talks you through some of the different offerings that this group has already talked about, but also what to use or think with as a teacher. And also, I am a journal editor, the Review of Higher Ed. And so thinking about, as was mentioned with Detra, about the researcher bias that Authenticate and different programs have. I mean, these are not the end all be all. Making sure that, I think in the chat, you all have mentioned, here's what Ohio State recommends. And I think Ana-Paula mentioned this at the start. Here's what Ohio State recommends. Making sure that you're going through something that's already been curated instead of giving all your raw data to the world to think with your conceptual framework, your original thinking. This is your work that you want to make sure you're published with your name, and you're not giving it elsewhere. I'll mention a easy, quick story. So I was looking for a movie that was years ago. Tara Yoso had mentioned it in her talk. I was like, where can I see this movie? And I had no idea. I found out where it was. I put in an AI. Then a couple months later, I was like, hey, where's that movie? I forgot. Oh, AI had it, right? And it was ChatGPT. So it does, in certain cases, you know, I think it's very important to make sure you're using like NVivo, or someone mentioned with MaxQda, they have relationships where they've already worked on the privacy issues. They're not taking all your data and sharing it with everyone. So where do you do that? Where do you, as a researcher, make sure you're very clear and precise with all the steps that you're doing in your audit trail, for example, in terms of your methods for collection, methods for analysis. Often I work with students on creating an audit trail of all your methods for analysis. Being very clear and honest about what you've done adds to your researcher credibility. So you want to make sure that you're being very clear about what you've done. Also, a colleague of mine has trained. I'll have Chat GPT-3 versus 4. This one will be really nice to me. This one will be like a little bit with an edge, you know. Hello, you look so beautiful today. It's good to see you. Let's think with you. And this one is a little bit like, I didn't like what that person said in that meeting either. You know, it's a little snarky, right? So think about how you want to set it up. What are the tools you want to use? But know, again, with qualitative researcher's instrument, it's your choices. And if you aren't educating yourself on what those choices are and you're letting AI do it for you, I think that's where, as researchers, we definitely don't want that. And as a new graduate student and even a faculty, how do you know everything about anything? You can't. So that's where learning from each other, creating the space. I'm just so grateful you all are here watching live or watching the video later, in order to engage as we learn with each other about what this means for teaching or learning in qualitative courses and beyond, as well as with our own research. So with that, I'm going to open it up. I know we've got questions about IRB. I know some of them were answered in the chat. Also, this might have the group kind of think through new issues or things. Oh, I wish I would have said this or that. But as Mimian mentioned at the start, I want to encourage people to unmute if you're comfortable, and then ask a question or offer a new concept or idea to this group. And we look forward to the conversation with you all. So with that, is there anyone that would like to start with the conversation or has something that you want to offer or ask?
I have one follow-up while someone's
Ooh,
waiting to
I
throw
love
their,
it.
right, good. From what Detra said and some then threads, it reminded me of one of my students who, when she was thinking about sampling, went to ChatGPT to ask questions about districts that were low SES. And what it returned to her was high racially minoritized districts. So I want to underscore that equity piece around the way that these tools conflate things that we as researchers do not intend to be conflated. And also just remind how these tools truly make things up. And our director of our Center for Teaching and Learning has really put together some phenomenal presentations where she showcases the conversations that she has with these tools and the folly that it responds with when she'll even ask it, why did you lie? Right? Why did you make stuff up? And it's as dodgy as some colleagues we've maybe had in our career, right? But if we don't know more than the machine, we might just take it as is. And if it gives you false information, it will even generate false sources, fully like it looks like these are articles that don't exist. So to always dig deeper, really important.
To the group, to the 40 people who are here, what are your experiences? What are the takeaways that have been useful to you in the classroom with your own research? What are the things that you have found most useful? I don't want to name names, but it's good to see the names of the people who are here, some dear colleagues. I'm so glad that you all are here. I'd love to hear from you all about some of the things that you all are thinking or have experienced with teaching qualitative.
I can start us off and share one if that's helpful. I always like
I would
to
love
give
that,
pause
Detra.
time.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I used to be an elementary teacher, so my pause time game is good, y'all. I can wait for a long time. But I was just thinking, listening to Susan, an experience that I had earlier on when trying to generate images to perhaps represent stories from my research. And so I wanted to create one for myself before asking the participants to do it. And at that time, this notion of Disneyfying your story was really popular. And oops, I hope my whole computer didn't shut down. I'm sorry if everything went away, but I'm still here.
You're good.
Okay, I see you
Yes.
again.
Perfect.
Like, oh my gosh,
On our end.
I love that. That's a consistent thing that happens in my life. My computer just says, I'm gonna give you a blank screen, but keep talking. Okay, so at any rate, I needed to try that myself, obviously, to walk through that process and the prompt engineering that would be necessary. And what I found as a Black woman is that the bias, and I believe that Casey and maybe Susan also talked about this, that exists within the systems and the models and the algorithms that are out there. It took me about 8 to 9 different prompts to finally try to get an image that reflected my version of Blackness as a Black woman. They all were either hyper stereotype, exaggerated features. it was multiple prompts after multiple prompts. And then also recognizing the limitations of what the large language models can do in image generation, trying to find one to represent my child. I eventually had to put a mix of, like, I think the last prompt I used was like Italian child that looks like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. It was this string. I mean, I wish I had done a better job of keeping the prompts to try to get an image that looked more like my child. So what it showed me immediately is I could not take this and do this with my participants. And so I think I just wanted to go back to saying how important it is for us to experiment with these tools. It was a huge learning lesson, but it also was a lot of exposure to things that I didn't want anyone else to experience, especially, participants. So I just wanted to share that, the importance of, sometimes it's like, oh, this is easy, we'll just work on prompt engineering, but what you get back, that reflection of you that's coming from a large language model, sometimes is really difficult to keep working through. So anyway, I wanted to share that as an experience.
Yeah. And I appreciate you on because what you just described that you would model, and the point that Penny amplified, is not only continue to push at it, but then if we can save as teaching tools those prompts, because for years I've asked students to submit images that represent something in their qualitative research, right? It might be your data collection, it might be what is your research, like how do you represent that? And they're now, this past spring, turning to just putting in the idea, but not pushing the machine more deeply. Instead, just like, okay, there it is. And then their narration will, but that shows me kind of the transactional use of the tool, which is a piece of the process, right? That I don't want us to just use it transactionally. So thanks for that.
And as we're learning too how to use this, I think it's really important to document that, because at the beginning, I don't know that I would be saving my prompts as I would do this, but now after hearing your story, Detra, it helps me as someone who's using AI to think about, hey, making sure that I save this, et cetera, et cetera. And also the bias that's built in, I think extremely problematic. I'm working with some scholars, some of you are here across the U, who Ohio State, about a new center with AI, and just really thinking about the equity and what are the rules and the boundaries, and working with social media companies, and the enormous responsibility, but also where AI has gone so much faster than any of our thinking it through in terms of the ramifications on people. I think about this weekend with family, over the holidays, and they had different perspectives in terms of, no, my child's application for college was all our ideas. We might have used AI for editing and copy editing and all that. Another was like, oh no, yay, we did a lot of our own ideas, but then we're like, hey, give me this or that in terms of the ideas. Oh no, that's fair game, right? And so different people have different conceptualizations. And I know, as somebody who's read some AI in pieces, what is your work and you edit it, and where is AI pretty formulaic? And how do you make sure you are using it, as Casey was talking about, as a colleague, to think with you, and then it's your work that you're putting through, and what are your expectations that might be different than someone else's, but being very clear about those as you go forward and we think of this together. Erica, I'm reading something from you. Maybe we'll see if we should. Erica, do you want to share about this, or just offer in the
Tatiana has
chat?
her hand up.
Oh, great. Thank you. Hey, Tatiana.
I had Leslie's hand was before me.
Oh,
I was going to go, I was thinking slightly the direction, talk about graduate handbook. So keep on the train that you guys are on now.
Okay, I'm gonna take us in a slightly different directions, which is the axiological aspects of conducting research with AI. And I'm drawing really on Bruno Latour's actor-actant network theory that views technology and inanimate objects as actors, because they do influence how we create our research, how we think about it. And so we are in the era where it is really coming into more of a hybrid form. We are now hybridize ourselves with technology. So my question is, how do you think it is changing the positionality and identity of the researcher who blends essentially themselves with the AI tools? It's a philosophical question, and I really like think in that direction too.
Well, it connects. I mean, this philosophical level that you're on is really where I spend a lot of my time wrestling with, because it raises questions around knowledge, the intelligence piece, but also humanness versus artificial. And as you're raising the increasing hybridity of our worlds, whether it's what we're doing right now, our fake fireplaces, right? Which some of them were generated probably by AI behind us. And so what is real? What constitutes as intelligence? We're in a world of a lot of fakeness, not just news, but on so many levels. And so the researcher as the instrument, the more that we are interacting with like computer assisted tools has been around for decades, but now it's pushing into this generative space that we thought the human had a different level of agency in their use of the tools. And even the notion of using generative AI as your peer debriefer. I mean, like 18 months ago, when a couple students started sharing that, I was like, what? And so an assignment, I think I've done it in once up to this point, is I want you to use an artificial intelligence tool as your peer debriefer and an actual human, right? I worry when we get to conducting interviews, like this is some of the questioning with our IRB that I was raising, is could we fast forward and see that HAL, Gen AI, going back to right, that film, is could conduct our interviews for us. And so I do worry about kind of not just chasing the path or just friendly collaborations without asking these larger philosophical question that you've put to us, because otherwise we could get pretty far down the road and go, wait a minute. I mean, just uploading transcripts to these tools is wildly unethical. But if they do move into this space of truly being our co-researchers, and also you could fast forward, right? Penny indicated that she chairs a journal. What if she gets a submission in a couple of years that the co-author is Claude, right? I mean, it's not too far off for us to imagine that. So really important question, Tatiana.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I really, something that you just said about authenticity, that the whole issue becomes so constructivist. I mean, it is constructed. What is authenticity and what kind of essence we're talking about, of essence of doing research, or subjectivity? Who is the subject? How do you subjectivize AI? So those are really fascinating questions.
And authenticity, in my view, I already love troubling that concept, because who's really allowed to be authentic and in what spaces, right? Just talking about humans and thinking about identity and identity politics and the gendered and racialized organizational spaces that we move within, right? Mm-hmm. So now if you start taking on artificial intelligence as part of that, woo, yeah.
And that's another thing from the conversation that you had earlier about using the tools. It seems that also AI can now determine who is authentic Like when we have AI determining human authenticity or authenticity of human subjects, that is a completely different waters we're entering. Okay, I will stop here because Susan, thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. That was so wonderful. I feel like we could keep going for another 20 minutes on this very topic, and it makes me think of some of the work that I've done on the axiological turn, right? We've got the epistemic turn, and I've done work with Leslie Gonzalez and epistemic injustice, and the ontological turn, and I feel like it's been an epistemic or an axiological turn, thinking about DEI, the ethics, who's included, who's not. And now with AI, it adds this other layer that you've invited us to really think about and push on in terms of what that axiological turn really looks like in terms of research. Thank you for that. Leslie, take us in a new direction.
Well, there was another person who had her hand up and then deferred to Tatiana, and so maybe she's still on the topic. So I want to keep some continuity if we can.
Oh, you're so great. Thank you so much. Is there somebody else who had their hand up? I usually get them in order here, but I might have missed if somebody had their hand up here.
Well, there was somebody who you gave the baton, and then she handed it off to Tatiana.
Aha. Was that Erica?
Yeah,
William and Mary?
yeah, that might have been me. I had shared, it kind of goes along this same thread, that I remember early on in my class this semester, where students wanted to know if they could use an generative AI for developing themes in a first cycle process, or like Susan has shared, using it as a peer debriefer. And thankfully the students were already thinking critically about the challenges of using it and I didn't have to add too much thought to that. But just a challenge, typically when I introduce this qualitative data analysis software in general, I make sure to stress that the software is a tool, it doesn't actually do the analysis, right? Because, going back through subjectivities and researcher as instrument being crucial to qualitative research, like Penny has mentioned, and kind of challenged us at the beginning. And so I continue to struggle and wrestle with this idea of the purpose of qualitative research. And I have some concern about taking the human out of humanizing research by using generative AI in these ways. Even just the idea of, like you said, a tool being used as a peer debriefer. And I love that idea around having an assignment, but we also have confines to time. We're fitting so much in to a foundational course. And it's you have to make choices and decisions around, what you can prioritize in your class. And so I don't know if any of the panelists have any other ideas about that around just, feel free to challenge me with that, but I still continue to get caught up in the fact that these are not human-based tools. They are, and our work should be focused on understanding the humanizing aspects of our problems in education, or more broadly, depending on where you are situated, in disciplines. So I'll pause there.
So just to say, I have to go to a candidacy exam, so apologies for stepping out, but thank you so much to all of you. It's been really interesting.
Oh, Leslie, thank you. We'll walk and talk about this soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. And I know we'll address Erica's comment, and then Mian will wrap us up because I want to be cognizant of time. Does somebody have a thought, Ana-Paula, about what Erica's talking about in terms of class, or anyone?
I always think that I always look at AI as it is now, because I cannot predict how it's going to be developed, as a tool, as something that will help me to accomplish a goal, and in this discussion, a work goal. Okay, so we use tools all day. We have our iPhones with scientific calculators, and we have word processors. Okay, so this is where I come from. Therefore, I just look at them as tools that will help me doing my work. I never look at these tools as they are right now as a substitute or replacement or even an expansion, because in my opinion, they are not developed at that point yet. And if we're going to teach qualitative research, then the first route is to do it manually. Remember when we did our data analysis and look at our recurrent themes and emergent themes? The first route should be human driven and made manually. So we have our hands dirty into the process. As we get more and more experience, then we use tools to help us to be more efficient, but we cannot use them if we don't know what the work entitles. So I kind of agree with Erica. Erica, thank you for putting us on that track.
And that's coming from one of the aforementioned global experts on AI, with Ana-Paula. So, you know, I so appreciate that. In the interest of time, Mimian, I'm going to hand it to you, and then hopefully we can continue to engage these conversations, because this is just the tip. I can't believe how fast time went with this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Penny. So let's give another round of applause to our panelists today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I also want to thank the audience for engaging in such a fruitful discussion. I'm sure we all have learned a lot in the past hour. So before I close today's panel, I also want to share with you our upcoming launch talk. So next semester, we'll have Dr. Dominic Hill from Colgate University talking about her new book, and you'll also be a book raffle in the session. So if you're interested, please register by scanning the QR code on the screen. I also want to remind you that you can watch the recording of this session and the other previous launch talk we have had on our YouTube channel. So this marks the end of our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again at our next event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.